Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
We're number 20. We're number 20. We're number 20. Yeah, it doesn't have the same ring to it, and I can see why nobody chants that. But, you know, if you look at the newest Human Freedom Index, which is what I was looking at recently, that's exactly where the United States falls in the Human Freedom Index, which was compiled by the Cato Institute, the Fraser Institute out of Canada, and the Liberalis Institute from Germany. And this is billed as the most comprehensive index on freedom yet created for a globally meaningful set of countries. Co-authors Ian Vasquez and Tanya Porsnick looked at 76 indicators in 152 countries to capture the degree to which people are free to engage in voluntary exchange and enjoy major liberties such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of association. Some of the other things that they looked at were also freedom of movement, women's freedom, safety and security, and the rule of law. They used data from 2008, or rather beginning in 2008 through 2012, the most recent year for which sufficient data is available. And you might be surprised which country comes in number one. Now, I've looked at several of these rankings in the past, and New Zealand has consistently been at the top of the list. Well, they have lost that spot. New Zealand is no longer the freest place in the world. That distinction belongs to Hong Kong. I know, that seems very surprising. When I think of economic freedom, I definitely think of Hong Kong. But when I think of social freedom, I do not think of Hong Kong. But yet, based on the report that was done here by Cato, the Fraser Institute, and the Liberalis Institute out of Germany, Hong Kong tops the list, followed by Switzerland, Finland, Denmark, New Zealand at number 5, Canada number 6, the United States, the good old supposed land of the free, is number 20, and that puts them, whatever sort of pronoun you want to use, the United States is still lower than the United Kingdom, which is in the top 10 at number 9, and Chile is number 18. Other countries they mention here, Singapore at 43, India at 75, Russia at 111, China 132, Venezuela, good old Venezuela with their strong bolivar that is now worth less than a paper napkin, is number 144. And Zimbabwe, the poster child for hyperinflation, ranks in at 149. The United States fell from 17th place in 2008 to 20th place in 2012. The decline reflects a long-term drop in every category of economic freedom and in its rule of law indicators. The U.S. performance is worrisome and shows that the United States can no longer claim to be the leading bastion of liberty in the world. In addition to the expansion of the regulatory state and drop in economic freedom, the war on terror, the war on drugs, and the erosion of property rights due to greater use of eminent domain all have likely contributed to the U.S. decline. The blog post here from Cato continues. It says, "We do not measure democracy in the index. though we do consider it important. Indeed, we find a strong relationship between human freedom and democracy, a link that merits further study. As such, Hong Kong is an outlier in our index. Its high ranking is due to its traditionally strong rule of law and high levels of both personal and economic freedom, something that all advocates of freedom, including democracy advocates, should seek to protect. The danger there is that China's efforts to limit democracy will lead to increasing interference in the territory's institutions, including on the independence of its legal system and the freedom of its press, which will reduce its overall freedom. Now, before I continue, you know what? There's only one paragraph here left, so I'll read this and then give my thoughts. We believe, they conclude, that freedom is inherently valuable and plays a central role in human progress, as the graph above shows, and this shows the average GDP per capita by HFI quartiles, but they don't necessarily specify what HFI stands for. But in the most free, I guess that's the Human Freedom Index. Duh. The most free countries, that being the top quartile, that's top 20%, the average GDP per capita is $30,006. The second quartile, that being from 21 to 40%, is $6,393. The third quartile, that being between 60 and, or hold on, no, quartile would be 25. So the top 25, then 26 to 50, 51 to 75. The average per capita GDP is $5,400, and then in the least free quartile, that's the bottom 25%, average GDP per capita is $2,600. They say, as the graph above shows, belonging to the freest country in the world greatly improves the average person's income. And then they link over to the study findings that includes the data and some of the goals of the research. But I want to talk about the democracy thing for a moment, because they're saying that they find a strong relationship between human freedom and democracy, something that merits further study. And I would say that it definitely merits further study, because true democracy does not in any way ensure human freedom. True democracy ensures that any group of people that outnumber any other group of people can do as they wish. And we've seen that happen in various aspects of life in America. For instance, there have been various zoning things where some group of people get together and they say, we're going to say that you can't run a business out of your home. We're going to say that you can't give food to the homeless or the hungry. We are going to say that you can't use your car to drive someone from point A to point B without you giving us a bunch of money, because that's what we said. And speaking of people driving their cars and helping people get from point A to point B, Uber has lowered the rate of drunk driving in one city. I'll tell you about it when we come back.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, ExpressCoin, and Amazon, at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Before I tell you where Uber has lowered the rate of drunk driving arrest, I want to make sure that I tell you about a website that has lowered the number of trolls on social media, at least on their particular website. That website is none other than liberty.me. And liberty.me, it's so much more than just a social networking website. It's what I consider all the best parts of the internet minus porn thrown into one place. So there's the social networking aspect. There's the blogging, publishing aspect. There are chat rooms. There are bulletin boards, forums. Bulletin boards, forums, pretty much the same thing. And Liberty.me also has free ebooks. There's what they call the Creator Studio, so you can find numerous podcasts. There's also Liberty Guides that are kind of like ebooks, but slightly different. And there is so much more at Liberty.me. And one thing that you will not find at Liberty.me is internet trolls, and that's because Liberty.me is a paid service. Go to Liberty.me, use referral code FPP Radio to save 10%. Liberty.me, referral code FPP Radio. The story here about Uber comes from Breitbart, and they say there were only 2 drunken driving arrests last New Year's Eve in San Francisco, the lowest since 2009, according to crime statistics from the San Francisco Police Department. The recent data comes on the heels of a new study revealing that the introduction of Uber's low-cost service, UberX, reduces drunk driving deaths all over California. Temple University's Brad Greenwood and Sunil Wattal published a new paper which finds that, not surprisingly, cheap taxi-like options make it easier for people to make safer decisions and call an Uber or Lyft rather than driving themselves home. If the benefit of Uber in California were extended to the entire country, ride-sharing would save billions of dollars and hundreds of lives. But I can imagine, and this is me speaking, not the article, I can imagine that there are some people that are not happy about this lower number of people getting arrested for drunk driving, and I'll explain that after I go through this article just a little bit more. The team, that being the team of researchers, Brad Greenwood and Sunil Wattal, they wrote, economically, results indicate that the entrance of UberX results in a 3.6 to 5.6% decrease in the rate of motor vehicle homicides per quarter in the state of California, with more than 13,000 deaths occur nationally each year due to alcohol-related car crashes and a cost of $37 billion. Results indicate that a complex implementation of UberX would create a public welfare net of over $1.3 billion to American taxpayers and save roughly 500 lives annually. Now, why would this make some people not happy? Why would some people not be happy about fewer drunk drivers? Well, the reason some people would not be happy about fewer drunk drivers is because, well, the very first statement, there were only 2 drunk driving arrests in San Francisco on New Year's Eve. Drunk driving tickets bring in a lot of money for various governments. So when you have fewer drunk drivers, then you have less revenue going into the coffers of the various governments, thus meaning that they're going to have to raise taxes on somebody, Well, it's a good thing that, saving lives is a net benefit to people, because now there's going to be more money from which to steal to pay for whatever program you were otherwise funding through the use of extortion, through stopping people that may have had a drink at the bar. The story here continues. The overwhelming benefit of ride-sharing apps makes it harder for local politicians to keep Uber out of their state or city with regulations. Last month, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio faced a backlash when he proposed to cap the number of ride-sharing cars that would be allowed to be on the road in New York City. Eventually, he conceded, but only after Uber put forth a massive public campaign and employed costly political operatives. This latest evidence makes the case that Uber isn't just a battle with local taxis, but a battle against drunk drivers. Previous attempts at estimating the number of drunk driving deaths that Uber had reduced were fraught with controversy. When Uber teamed up with MAD, that's Mothers Against Drunk Driving, for a study, Uber ended up claiming that the conclusions of the research were much more convincing than MAD was willing to admit. There was just too much noise in the data. The latest study uses more sophisticated statistical analysis and leverages a common economic trick to estimate the effects of Uber. The decision to enter a market is often political. Uber will start hiring in a city if it knows it will not face overbearing regulations. That decision is often unrelated to other reasons why there might be reductions in drunk driving accidents, such as a city's population, bar scene, and tougher enforcement. California is uniquely important in the study because the state has been part of UberX's rollout since it began in 2012, which means that you can study what happens when the company can saturate. Yet they did say saturate. What happens when the company can saturate a city with enough of its drivers to change consumer behavior? The state is also large enough that economists can estimate the differences in how Uber affects cities within the same state as it slowly enters adjacent markets. Today, Uber and Lyft drivers are all over San Francisco. As a resident, the person writing this apparently lives in San Francisco. He says, as a resident, I can say that using ride-sharing apps in the city has become part of the culture. Last New Year's Eve in San Francisco, there were so many Uber and Lyft drivers on the road that users did not experience the dreaded surge pricing, which in the past could mean paying over $100 for a short ride home. There was little excuse for anyone to drive on New Year's Eve with a plethora of cheap alternatives. The data on San Francisco drunk driving arrests during New Year's Eve makes it difficult to know whether Uber was the cause of the reduction in drunk driving or whether the decline began in 2011, or rather the decline that began in 2011 would have happened anyway. This latest study makes the case that Uber was likely a significant, if not a primary, factor. Evidently, Uber, Lyft, and other disruptive transportation services are saving lives. And they're using the term there, disruptive transportation service, because that's how the taxi companies and the politicians see Uber and Lyft and these other peer-to-peer companies. They see them as disruptive because it's shaking up the status quo. And yes, they are disruptive. And that's what needs to happen. Peer-to-peer, all the things. Like everything should be decentralized and peer-to-peer, including college entrance. And I'll explain that when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Feinphone. I'm using Feinphone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Feinphone.
Feinphone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Feinphone right now at Feinphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Feinphone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to Feinphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's Feinphone.com. Feinphone.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Feinphone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Now, I don't know exactly how to make college entrance peer-to-peer, but I can tell you how you don't make it peer-to-peer, and that's by using standardized tests. And I remember when I was in high school 20 years ago, I would have began my senior year 20 years ago. And one of the things that was sort of, accepted and part of high school life, and even, to some extent in a lot of places it still kind of is, but it seems as though that's going away. It's taking either the SATs or the ACTs. And I forget which one I took. There's one of them that ranks you on like a scale of up to 1,600. The other one, the highest score is a 36, I think, or something like that. I took the one where the high score is a 36, and I forget exactly what I got. But like if I was 1 point higher and my GPA was a 1/10 of a point higher, I could have gotten an academic scholarship to pretty much any school that I wanted to go to. Instead, I wound up getting a scholarship to a community college. Initially, the scholarship was for forensics, and no, not CSI. Forensics is what they call the various speech competitions that happen. So like public speaking and whatnot. So it's not debate. Debate is something else, but I think it falls under the same sort of umbrella of forensics. So one of the things that I did was an interpretive reading, and it was me and a partner, and we did an interpretive reading of Mice and Men. And I played Lenny. Tell me about the rabbits, George. Tell me about the rabbits. And I get to feed the rabbits, right, George? I get to feed the rabbits. And then I get shot in the back of the head. So that was what I began going to college on, was a forensics scholarship. And then I wound up losing that scholarship because basically over one of the breaks between two of the quarters, I was supposed to have shown up for so many hours of practice. And because I had a job and other stuff going on, I didn't actually show up. So, through my own stupidity, I lost that scholarship. But I then, the next quarter, picked up a radio management scholarship where I helped manage the college radio station that sadly no longer exists. And I found that out several months ago when I was looking at list of radio stations in Birmingham and saw that WJSR was no longer on the list. And I was like, oh, what happened? And then saw that, they gave up the license. So I don't even know if the college that I went to still even offers a broadcasting degree. So, long story short, I took standardized tests to wind up being able to go to college. And a lot of high schoolers do that. And a lot of people that are in high school, they wind up, they get scared because, well, if I don't get a good enough grade, then I can't go to the school that I want to, and then I can't major in the thing that I want to, and I've got to become a plumber. Not that there's anything wrong with being a plumber, because we need plumbers. I think that there's an overemphasis on college. So, maybe this getting rid of standardized tests to determine who goes to college might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. The world will never know because it's not something that really has one of these sort of, ways that you can objectively look at it. You just sort of have to look at it and be like, oh, well, this happened. But the story here comes from Reuters, and they write, hey, high schoolers scared of bombing the SATs and not going to college? Don't worry, a growing number of U.S. schools are scraping standardized test scores as part of admission. Washington, D.C.'s George Washington University last month joined more than 850 colleges and universities that no longer require applicants to take either the SAT or the ACT test that have been a feature of American student life for decades. Proponents of making the test optional say the switch can help schools become more diverse and admit students who will thrive even though they may have lagged other applicants on scores. Karen Stroud-Felton, the Dean of Admissions at George Washington University, said it was really about making sure that the right students from whom George Washington would be a great place, were not discouraged from applying. And I'm sort of thinking about this a little bit more here, and maybe you want to discourage some people from applying. That's why if you look at job descriptions, and really college is supposedly there to give you knowledge and train you for the real world. And part of the real world is reading a job description and deciding whether or not you are qualified to apply for that job. And yes, I realize that some job descriptions are absolutely horribly written. Like, we're seeking an entry-level something, and we want you to have a college degree and 3 to 5 years of management experience. I'm sorry, but nothing that requires a degree and experience is entry-level anything. Entry-level is, we will take anybody and we will train you to do the job. That is what entry-level means. So if you see entry-level, then you would automatically think, I can apply for this. But then you read the description and you're like, oh, well, I don't have this and I don't have this. And that should lead you to the conclusion that it's not entry level, but some people will apply for that anyway. So that there are people that are not qualified for jobs that apply for those jobs. And there are some people that, and I've had this problem in the past, where I have applied for a job because I met every criteria they wanted. And then after 2 interviews, I was told that I was overqualified for the job. Now, the whole, you're overqualified is just, it's BS, basically, because what they're actually saying is, we are scared that if we hire you, you won't stay here long term and you might wind up leaving us, so we're not going to hire you to begin with. But you want some sort of criteria, because you don't want, hiring a CEO. There's no criteria at all. And then everybody winds up applying for the job because everybody thinks they can do it. So you want some criteria. So the whole thing of, we don't want to discourage anyone from applying, basically you're begging now to be overloaded with paperwork. The Dean of Admissions here this is not a quote from the Dean. The article continues, the test optional trend has accelerated in recent years, with more than 24 schools dropping the requirement since the spring of 2014, according to the National Center for Fair and Open Testing, which advocates for test optional admissions. They include Wisconsin's Beloit College and Temple University in Philadelphia. But defenders of the SAT and ACT test on math, reading, and writing say they level the playing field for applicants and provide an objective measure for scholarships. What do you think? There's more to this article. I'll post the link in the show notes. And, of course, I'll be back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you've got questions, send those AMA at fppradio.com.